I'd now like to introduce the Sierra Fund's administrative director, who has various other superpowers other than being excellent at administrative direction. Alex Keeble-Toll will be speaking about the Lava Cap Mine case study for 15 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes of Q&A right after that.
So my name is Alex Keeble-Toll. As Izzy said, I'm the administrative director at the Sierra Fund, and it's my pleasure to kick off our third Mining Monday with a case study about Lava Cap Mine here in Nevada City. I personally love this case study, both because I was born and raised in Nevada City, so many of the events you're going to hear about, I was actually living here when they happened. And this is a great case study because it's a really good illustrative tool for understanding the need for due diligence, not just in terms of our topic at hand today, but I think it really underscores that gold rush impacts are pervasive in the headwaters across public and private lands, that there's impacts as a result to the resilience of forests, watersheds, and public health. I think it demonstrates the utility of informed assessment in determining how abandoned mine land should be used and restored. It underscores the importance of informed assessment in the appraisal process and shows how it intersects with liability. And further, it does kind of allude to how informed assessment should play into project design and permitting. So there's a whole bunch of issues associated with this case study. It sort of has all the things, as I like to say. Lava Cap Mine was a hard rock mine that was well known historically and in the present day. And enough is known about the past success and potential reserves of this site that there were actually 2 attempts to reopen it in the 1970s and 1980s before the mine was purchased for residential development, which is really kind of what the thrust of this case study is about in terms of relevance to today. So this site was purchased for development, and investment was secured to back the development before a whole series of events sort of unfolded that made the egregious contamination associated with the site known. And then there was this cascade of impacts following that associated with liability. So I am going to go over early history, and you're sort of going to have to bear with me here because basically this is really important because the early history and the understanding, the vast amount of information about this site really highlights that had informed assessment taken place, this history would have been known and it potentially would have informed understanding of the highest and best use of this land. So gold and silver mining activities initiated at the site in 1861. As was common with many large mines getting started, initially the ore disposal and processing didn't actually take place on site. That actually took place off site at the Banner Mine, which was about 1.5 miles away. And like I said, that was fairly common early in corporate mining before these corporations sort of developed enough of the capacity to do these things on site. So the mine was closed for a period of time, and then in 1934, the activities resumed, and a flotation plant was built to process the ore at the site. And then in 1940, a cyanide plant was built, and that was to recover the concentrates on site. And so in true corporate style during this era, the owners of Lava Cap Mine are increasing their production speed and they're reducing their production costs. And this is important because these activities that took place on site as part of this increase in production and processing sort of play out later when we talk about contamination. So from 1941 to 1943, the cyanide plant at this site handled the middlings and tailings from the flotation plant. These were ground to a really fine size, and then they were vat leached in cyanide to remove the residual gold and silver. And the cyanide-laden crushed material contained naturally occurring arsenic. So it was brought up from underground, it was crushed and processed. And this was problematic because the slurries from the flotation and cyanide processes were deposited in a ravine on the site. So where the ravine steepened and narrowed, a log dam approximately 60 feet high was built to hold these tailings in place. And the waste rock and all the overburden that were removed as part of the digging of the shafts were also deposited in 2 piles on the site between the mine site and the tailings pond. And so this report, what you're looking at right here, is an excerpt from a report for investors in the Lava Cap Mine. And it's basically noting that their on-site storage meets the requirements for the California Debris Commission, which was established to prevent the downstream conveyance of mine waste. So this was an example of a debris control dam to hold these materials on site. So in 1952, the mine was acquired by a different company, Sterling Center Core. And as we'll see, this turns out to be probably a dubious business investment for them. They also had a Canadian subsidiary, Keystone Copper, that was acquired at the same time. So here's where things start to get interesting. The mine was proposed for reopening in 1978, but the Greenhorn Road Association petitioned to have that not happen. And so there was neighborhood awareness of this mine site and of the potential for there to be issues associated with it, to the extent that in 1979, local residents basically complained and they initiated an action from the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board. And the Water Quality Control Board came out and they inspected that log containment dam that was holding back those processing wastes and the tailings pond. And they basically advised that these structures were unstable, and they issued a cleanup and abatement order for the property owners to take measures to limit the tailings discharges to Little Clipper Creek. So there was a creek and runoff, to divert surface water from the mine and mill waste deposits, and to obtain an evaluation of the dam. So the owners constructed some small settling basins below the dam, some diversions around the tailings, but that containment structure that was deemed to be unstable had no improvements made to it. In '84, another attempt was made to reopen the mine. This was by a different corporation. The Board of Supervisors approved rezoning and issued a use permit, even though this had previously been opposed and it was fairly well established that this was a mine site. Once more, local residents opposed, a different group, the Banner Mountain Homeowners Association, and they basically were successful in getting a ballot referendum to overturn that zoning decision. So here's where it starts to get really interesting in terms of appraisal and liability. In 1989, a developer, Stephen Elder, and a partner bought 486 acres, which included the Lava Cap mine, for real estate development. They wanted to subdivide the property into 69 5-acre residential lots with a fire station and a large open space parcel to be called Lava Cap Estates. Nevada County acted as the lead agency and prepared a negative declaration for the property. And this is despite the fact that it was well known that this was an abandoned mine land. And in the very brief CEQA document description, it notes, among like 3 other things that are very basic about the proposed development, that it was on the abandoned Lava Cap mine site. So enter Gold Country Lenders. Gold Country Lenders was a real estate company, and they basically ambitiously attempted to do real estate development projects by putting people together to fund these projects rather than seeking bank funding, which is the more traditional model. And the way they did this was they issued securities in the form of fractionalized deeds of trust that were secured by these parcels of land that were supposed to be developed. Many of the investors in GCL were 65 years or older. And most importantly, unbeknownst to these investors, the money that was invested in one project usually paid investors on other projects, and the borrowers and the property owners were not generally disclosed. So there wasn't a lot of transparency as to what fractionalized deed of trust for what piece of land one was investing in. And the fact that Lava Cap Estates and actually other development projects that Gold Country Lenders was offering these securities on were proposed for had historic mining activity, and that was not known to the folks investing in this as well. So unfortunately for the investors in Lava Cap Estates, the risk of attempting to develop this property on an abandoned mine land without first considering whether that was the highest and best use of the property, or if there were other highest and best uses based on the need to address these sort of fairly known chemical hazards, was about to unfold. So in New Year's Eve, 96, I was in high school here in Nevada City when this happened. So I remember it being in the news. We had really heavy rains and the log containment dam at the lava cap mine failed. And it sent 10,000 cubic yards of mine tailings into Little Clipper Creek and Lost Lake. So all those tailings from way back when that were being held by that California Debris Commission approved dam came down Little Clipper Creek into Lost Lake. In early 97, staff from California Department of Fish and Wildlife and Nevada County Environmental Health came out and they inspected the site, and they found deposits of tailings along Little Clipper Creek, at the confluence of Little Clipper Creek and Clipper Creek, and then on the shoreline of downstream Lost Lake. So you're actually seeing in this picture a child playing in those tailings with their shovel and their wagon after that release of contaminated tailings from the log containment dam. So what happened in the aftermath of this? Well, in 97, the Department of Toxic Substance Control conducted sampling at the mine site and then off-site at the lava cap mine, basically to determine locations and concentrations of arsenic contamination. In 1999, EPA started investigating the site, and they found elevated levels of arsenic in Little Clipper Creek downstream of the mine, in Lost Lake and below Lost Lake. They found elevated levels in contamination in soil throughout the site and in groundwater beneath the mine waste and on properties adjacent to the mine. So at the time, samples of drinking water wells near the mine had arsenic in concentrations ranging from 2 to 90 times the drinking water standard, which is 10 parts per billion. So remediation of the lava cap mine has been ongoing since 1997. Basically, what you're looking at here are remediation actions that occurred between 97 and 2014. As assessment has unfolded, more stringent actions have been taken. So initially, EPA installed a drinking water treatment unit for each impacted residence. In 2014, they basically connected all the residents living near the former mine site to the municipal water supply. This site has been divided into 4 operational units with associated records of decision for how the issues are to be addressed. And then just to let you know, I mean, since 97, this has been going on. Remedial design for Operation Unit 1 is still underway. The revised feasibility study and proposed cleanup alternatives for Operation Unit 3 is still underway. And these are not expected until 2023. So it's been just going on and on. What were the consequences? Well, in 2008, EPA and DTSC filed a complaint against Stephen Elder, his company Elder Development Corp., and the mine companies Sterling Center Corp. And Newmont Mining Company. Basically, prospects to develop lava cap estates were now out of the question. So the investment scheme that the Gold Country lenders had devised was no longer tenable. So all these investors, more than 100 of them, were notified by mail from Gold Country lenders that they were suspending monthly interest payments owed to the investors for 6 months. So they were sort of just doing a stopgap measure. We have no money, and we'll see kind of how this plays out. In 2009, Newmont Mining Company settled for $3 million. This was not their first rodeo, so to speak, in terms of being implicated in a mine cleanup, and they settled for $3 million. The other partners in this went to trial, and in 2012, an initial trial concluded that Sterling Center Corp. And Stephen Elder were going to be responsible for the cleanup costs.
1 minute left, Alex.
Yep.
1 minute.
Okay. And Sterling basically tried unsuccessfully to pin their liability on Keystone Copper, their subsidiary. The final recorded judgment issued in 2018 concluded that the federal and state government is entitled to recover $32 million in costs from Sterling and Elder. So just for fun, if we look at Zillow price comps in the region of where this development, Lava Cap Estates, was proposed, for 5-acre parcels, it's about $290,000 right now. So if we assume today's prices, had this property been a hypothetical clean or non-AML property, basically the sale of those 69 5-acre lots would have been worth about $18 million. Instead, the property turns out to be worth negative $32 million in terms of the cleanup costs, and the investors have been left out in the cold. The Gold Country lenders were sentenced to serve jail time for fraud and elder abuse, because it turns out that lava cap mine property's highest and best use, based on the level of contamination, might potentially just have been open space, not residential development. So for some parting words, in 2011, Elder told the Union newspaper, which is our local newspaper here in town, that he knew the area had been a mine and contained tailings, but that he didn't worry about them. Furthermore, he said that the State Water Resources Control Board's warning and order about the log containment dam never appeared in the disclosures about the purchase. If Elder and Gold Country lenders had disclosed to their investors that they were proposing development in a potentially toxic, proposing investment in a potentially toxic asset with issues around water quality and liability, perhaps the investors would have chosen to take their money elsewhere and not invested. And if the State Water Resources Control Board's warning had been part of the disclosures, then perhaps Stephen Elder would have decided that purchasing the land for lava cap estates was not the best idea in the first place.